Today, I'm spending another 100 days in my Minecraft cave-only world, bringing our world total up to 200 days. And in these next 100 days, I want to get rich and absolutely stacked. If you missed the previous 100 days, there's a link to it in the top right. And really quickly, I wanted to thank you all for the insane support recently. It honestly feels surreal to be at 100,000 subscribers, so thank you all so much. Also, follow my socials and join my Discord server, all links in the description. But yeah, sit back and enjoy the next 100 days. And so it begins, day 101. I hadn't been in this world in a super long time, so I spent a lot of this day refreshing my memory on what I had made. But my first order of business was to find my bees, as they hadn't been coming to their hive. Fortunately, I found them pretty fast, and for some reason, they were flying at a wall. So with a poppy, I brought them back to my home temporarily so that I had time to create a home for them. Also, you guys gave some great names for my cats in the last 100 days, but my favorite was TheTerrain, as suggested by Axolotl. This name is just... Day 102, I was bringing my bees over to an area I had dug out for them. I placed a beehive and their bee nest, set the floor to grass, and planted some flowers for them to pollinate. My bees also produced some honeycomb that day, which I used to make some new candles, which, fun fact, I did not use at all for the rest of these 100 days. I also decided to construct a max level beacon near my base, the only issue being that, we're underground. So I made my way up to the surface, marked the coordinates, and dug straight down towards the beacon. Needless to say, a big mistake. I was still mining down on day 103, this time with a water bucket, and luckily I landed in the right spot next to the beacon. But for some reason, the beacon wasn't working. I went up right against bedrock and mined all of the stone in its way, but there was no beacon beam. But on day 104 I found the issue, one dirt block wedged between bedrock. It took an absurd amount of time to figure out that I just needed to break one piece of dirt. I went to the nether the next day to try and get some wither skeleton skulls. I had a skull back at my base, meaning I only needed 2 more to fight the wither again. I also decided to visit my enderman farm for some XP, but then I saw something. Or rather, I didn't see anything. The enderman farm was just gone. And at this point, I think it's important to mention that I was on an Optifine pre-release for these first few days, meaning my game was very buggy. I assumed that this chunk was just a glitch, and so I made one of the dumbest moves I could have done. I flew off into the chunks, which led to this. Despite falling with my elytra, and even though I used fireworks, the fireworks were completely useless, and I was 1 second away from death. This turned out to be an Optifine bug related to chunk loading, and seeing as I would have survived if my fireworks actually worked, I decided to ask on the community tab whether or not I should continue. And with over 9,500 votes, you guys really wanted me to continue as if nothing happened. And so I joined back, set the world to LAN, and gave myself my items back. However, just to make it a bit more fair, I reset all of my XP and threw out one of the 2 items I needed for my wither fight, my bow. My first order of business was to get some XP levels, so I went back to the nether to mine some quartz, and I couldn't help but go back to the end to check on the missing chunks. And if you need further proof of how buggy this Optifine pre-release was, you can literally see my fireworks that I used to try and escape the void. Couldn't help propel me forwards, but I guess a fireworks show will do. So for now, I had to manually grind enderman for levels. The next day, I named another one of my cats Kit. I forget exactly who suggested it, but I thought Kit mixed with cat was... And I spent the rest of the day preparing materials for a new enderman farm, since I really wanted an easier way to get levels. And by the end of the day, I had all the materials I would need. Oh, and this dude also swung by my home. Of course, I didn't leave him outside, and I named my boy Slime Shady. I then traveled to the end to rebuild my farm, and I couldn't pick up the shulker box of materials. I thought rejoining would fix the issue, and then... Yeah, my brain is hurting. No, I did not rebuild the farm in creative, I just relogged and this happened. This Optifine version was just weird. I spent the remainder of the day grinding levels, but it's still annoying that I got all the materials for the farm that just already existed. Day 110, I was back home and ready to enchant my bow with bad enchantments, grindstone it, and get good enchantments for the wither fight. And speaking of the wither fight, I started digging a tunnel to summon it, but of course I forgot the soul sand and heads, aka the only things I needed for the fight. But after retrieving those, I went back to my tunnel, spawned it in, and was ready to battle. The fight was over pretty quickly, and with my powerful bow and sword, I easily got my 3rd nether star and eventually beacon. And the rest of that night, I terraformed an area on my custom platform. My goal for this area was to have a small town and villager trading hall, and I also started building my Axolotl aquarium in my house, where I'd keep all variants of the Axolotl mob. I caught a yellow axolotl as well as a cyan one, and then spent a ton of time searching for the rare blue one, but unfortunately they barely spawn in the world. My villagers also spawned another cat, and seeing as this one was orange, I was legally obligated to name it Garfield. And the rest of that night I spent mining out a villager trading hall on my platform. And by day 112 I was using polished deep slate and stone bricks to finish off the walls and ground. By the time day 113 rolled around, I was ready to start transporting villagers, starting with my farmer. Fortunately, this process is pretty easy. You just steal their workstation and attract them back to it. Their sheer determination and zero concentration to their surroundings makes them pretty easy to move. After the farmer, I repeated this with my soulmate Mason and my other soulmate Mason number 2. I went back into the nether day 114 and without even trying to, I got another skull. But the reason I traveled here was to try and find a bastion, because I had actually never raided one in this world. Unfortunately for me, I found one pretty close to the nether fortress and I traveled into the structure. But even with full netherite armor, I had to be cautious of the piglin brutes, because 3 hits from them means game over for me. I went through the piggy palace raiding its ancient debris, netherite scraps, gilded blackstone, and other loot. Unfortunately, I spotted all the brutes before they spotted me, and I used my bows to kill them from a distance. I made my way to the middle of the Bacon Coliseum, where I found loads of ancient debris and a netherite ingot. With all the debris I had, I was going to be able to upgrade almost all of my tools. As my debris smelted, I also decided to take down my max level beacon, and instead just make it 1 level, since I could use the other ore blocks for other beacons. And after grabbing my netherite scraps, I had 3 total ingots, which I put on my sword, my axe, and my shovel. I spent some time exploring the next day, where I found this area with like 5 intersecting ravines. Obviously I had to check this place out, but unfortunately there really wasn't anything worth taking. But while I was there, I did find a brown axolotl, meaning that I only needed the final blue axolotl for my aquarium. That night I went back to the surface with my beacon to set up a max level beacon near my farlands. The reason I set it up here was because the beacon already had sunlight, and there were huge chunks of stone that I could mine. And mine I did. I was getting as much stone as my inventory could hold. This is how much stone I ended up clearing by that morning. I then traveled back down to my home to make a weakness potion, as I wanted to cure my masons to trade the stone for a better price. I also found a dripped out zombie which was going to infect my masons, and I led her back to her new home, aka a hole on my platform, and I figured there was no time to waste, so I brought out my masons and let my zombie do the rest. Day 117, my masons were looking very ugly, so I separated them from the zombie to cure them. 1 weakness potion, 2 apples, and 5 minutes later, their prices were slightly reduced, but not enough, so it was time for my zombie Brenda to take it to round 2. 1 cure and apparently a skies video later.
Was messed up, most likely from me flying away and the game glitched.
The prices were again better, but not the best. So you know what that means, Brenda was coming for round 3. And after a good night's rest, the price was finally 1 stone for 1 emerald. With that, I put my masons back in the wall and started making tons and tons of emeralds. Since I had over 30 stacks of stone, I was definitely going to be rich very, very soon. My platform still kinda seemed boring though, so I spent day 119 building a custom tree. I'm not the best at building trees, but I think this one is okay, especially with the roots hanging off the wall. And speaking of greenery, I then traveled to a place that had absolutely none of it to get some gold and gas tiers. The gold I mined was used to barter, as I wanted to get a lot of leather for item frames to organize my storage room, and in the end I got 11 in total, which means I can make 11 item frames to put on my chest the next day. I also spent a good portion of this time trading my stone, seeing as I had so much of it and I wanted that cha-ching. And then it was time to work on a new farm, this one being an iron farm. And for some reason, I thought it would look cool to be under the Beacons Island, so that's where I decided to build it. I also got some villagers over to this area, which took an incredibly long time, but now I just had to find a zombie, which there were absolute loads of. I spent day 122 finishing up the farm, getting the zombie in place, and before I even got out of the killing chamber, I could hear iron golems burning. And surely enough, when I checked the chest, we get our first bits of iron. Good stuff. But you know what's not good stuff? This guy, because he somehow spawned outside of the killing chamber. So to try and prevent this, I tried adding some terrain to block off all the spawning locations, and I don't think it's too bad of an addition to my caverns. After some day 123 money, I headed back to the surface again to raid villages of white terracotta. I don't really know why I grabbed this stuff, but while I was up here, I also stole some dark oak logs from pillager outposts, and for some reason, there were no pillagers here. I would have started a raid if I had the chance, but clearly no baddies wanted to fight. I then lured Brenda into a new hole just so she could have some extra room to move around, and I then filled up a really small body of water next to my tree. But this wasn't just any water source, no, because this one leads to a waterfall. I know, I'm so creative. Nobody's ever done this before. I returned home to make some fireworks and then headed off to the stronghold and into the end. And in the end, I spent 2 days looking for end cities. I found one relatively quickly, went into its end ship, and got myself another elytra. Sorry, elytra, because you guys absolutely flamed me in the last video's comments. I raided this end city's ores, armor, and then found a new end city, which I of course raided for its elytra wings. I'm just gonna say wings. After this, I located a third end ship, beat up the inside shulker, and got my third pair of wings. I don't even know how I got so lucky with finding these ships, but I was racking up wings like crazy. And in the end, I got 4 wings and a bunch of other stuff, which you can see here. Day 129, I started building a bridge over to a new cliff where I planned to make some farms. But I was gonna wait to build those, as I wanted to get some new masons to trade my stone to. I had a lot of stone from the surface, and 2 masons just wasn't going to cut it. So I brought 3 new masons to Brenda to get some more traders. I didn't even bother checking their prices the first cure round. I knew that they weren't the best, so Brenda came back for a second feast that night. And after spending all of day 131 curing these masons, the prices were all good, meaning that I could bring them all back to my trading hall to trap them. Side note, there was a random cat next to my farmer, so I tamed it and fished it into the composter. Why? I don't know, but it does look funny. Day 132, I was converting my stone into emeralds, and then my emeralds into emerald blocks, which I now had over a stack of. The remainder of the day, I went caving and getting a lot of different ores. And upon returning, my masons now reset their trades to 17 stone for 1 emerald. What, did I not cure you fast enough? Of course, revenge is the best remedy, so I brought all 3 of them back to be zombified again. Hopefully this will teach them a lesson. And luckily, 2 villagers did reset back to 1 stone for an emerald, but this absolute nitwit raised his price. One of my good boys can come with me, but I'm giving this idiot some more alone time with my zombie. And somehow, against all laws of Minecraft, this dude set his price to 46 stone for an emerald. How does that happen? So on day 135, I just gave up trying to cure this dude and I just brought him back. But there is 0 way I'm supporting this dude with my stone. After getting some extra supplies on day 136, I realized that my home didn't even have a ceiling yet. So I started placing polished andesite slabs to make it look nice. And for some extra decor, I made a pool table thing. I don't have access to green wool, so this is the best that I could do. The next day, I started on a small building project, as I wanted to make a mini cave area near my amethyst geode for some extra lore in my world. And what is the lore behind this place? None. It's just a cave. This lush area over here is my favorite though, especially with these mini mushroom blocks. I just love how it looks. I also added some ore blocks into the cave, but I had to fly around to gather some more. But in the end, I was super happy with the result. After completing the cave, I started buying lots and lots of glass for absolutely no reason. Day 141, I headed back to that bastion I raided a while ago because I realized that there could be a whole other section that I missed. And surely enough, there was. So I went ahead and grabbed the gold blocks and very carefully took out these brutes. I also opened chests extremely cautiously, and one chest even gave me a snout banner pattern. But just as I was starting to feel comfortable, I was face to face with a danger. I came into contact with 3 piglin brutes. They disabled my shield immediately, and if they hit me just one more time, I would have lost my world forever. Fortunately, I blocked off a wall, healed up, and sniped all 3 of them from the safety of the wall. And the loot in this room wasn't even that great. It just had another snout pattern, one ancient debris, and some chains. But with my rush of adrenaline, I felt the urge to raid some more piggy palaces, so I found another one and began hunting for more loot. But this trip was 100% worth it, because I managed to find the legendary Pig Step music disc. And after stealing all of the gold blocks and killing this last guy, I went to my Enderman grinder to mend up my tools. Day 143, I smelted the 3 ancient debris I found, and using the 1 netherite scrap laying around in my chest, I managed to make my final netherite ingot, which went on my only diamond tool I had left. And to top off today, I planted most of my oak saplings for some extra wood while I was down in the caverns. But the tree growth was really slow, so I headed to a soul sand valley to get some bone blocks. But then this ghast gave me a brilliant idea. And that idea was to respawn the Ender Dragon. But the Ender Dragon fight was going to have to wait a second, because I wanted to first build a new farm with redstone. Now, I'm okay at Minecraft commands, but redstone is not my strong suit at all. But you know what? I'm willing to try it out. You know what else I'm willing to try out? Some flint and steel on this child who jumped on my bed earlier that day. The next 2 days I took a tally of all the possible sheep colors, as my farm was going to be an automatic sheep farm. But midway through building it, I had the realization that I could mix dyes together, meaning that I didn't have 8 colors of wool, I had 13. That's a royal mess up. After setting up all the redstone, the last step was just to transport the sheep over to the farm, which sounds easy, but of course mobs are just never easy to work with. But using some leads I made, I got all the sheep in position, bred some sheep together for different colors, and dyed the rest. And after putting the collection system in place and filling dispensers with shears, the farm was complete. I then spent some time chopping down my trees, but I noticed something. Another baby slime. I lost Slime Shady somewhere, so I decided that this new slime would be my new best friend. I named her Marissa, and I decided to make her the mascot of my iron farm. But then, out of nowhere, my best friend, gone. Her life taken from this large iron creature. How could the world be so cruel? Rest in slime balls, Marissa. You will never be forgotten. Anywho, the next day I made a bunch of new shulker boxes for my next huge project, a gold farm. Only issue is that gold farms need about 2 shulker boxes of magma blocks, and I had a grand total of 2 stacks. So I made my way into the nether to collect as many of those blocks as I could. And after a long time of mining, I finally had enough to start work on the farm. And the next day, I was preparing to build the project. To do this, I was going to need to be on top of the nether roof. So I got it to the right spot, lined up the shot, and got on top easy as pie. Unfortunately, my smooth brain did not forget the obsidian to make my portal back home. But unluckily, this portal was in a horrible spot. I didn't want to fly through the actual caves, as I was pretty sure that I'd get lost. But fortunately for me, the far lands were right next to my portal, so I could just fly on the overworld roof. After using so many rockets in the nether, I only had 2 left by the time I got home. But oh man, was it a good feeling to be back. And why was I home, you may ask? Well, because I forgot a stone cutter. That was the only reason. Back I go. And so days 156 to 160, I was constructing this farm. And needless to say, this was not an enjoyable experience. I was following a tutorial by Random G Games, and I first had to build a circle out of slabs, then another circle out of slabs, and then fill in the inner circle. And just when I thought I was done building circles, no, time for 3 more, this time with magma blocks. And while it does look cool, if I have to build another one of these, I may throw myself into lava. On the bright side though, the time lapse does look sick. Plus, I can't lie, the final block placement was the most satisfying moment of my life. Next, I made the killing chamber and the path for the pigmen to the killing chamber, and with some storage in place, it was ready to test. I looked for any possible issues that could kill me, and I then angered a pigman. And surely enough, they came right to my killing chamber to get smacked. And right off the bat, I realized just how many golden swords this thing was going to produce. I mean, this place was practically a sword dispenser. But I was more interested in the actual gold nuggets, which came rolling in as soon as I started hitting the pigmen. And for the rest of that day, I was swinging my sword, racking up XP, and raking in free gold. And by the end of the day, I had tons of rotten flesh, nuggets, and an overwhelming number of golden swords. Back home, I organized all of my unused materials from the farm and used my flesh for the only thing I could think of: selling it to a cleric. But I'm thinking this price is a little high, so you know what time it is. It's time to brew some weakness potions for my boy. Before I did that though, I wanted to get a slightly better bow, so I enchanted a new bow until I got the infinity enchantment. And of course, a bow this good deserves a name, so I called it Bo Burnham. Clearly, I finished watching Inside at this point. I'm still broken from it. But you know who isn't inside? My cleric, because I was bringing him over to Brenda for a zombification. While I cured him, I checked out my wolf farm, and surely enough, it was actually producing stuff. I don't know why I'm surprised, but it's good to see some new blocks being automated. When I checked back in on my cleric, his prices weren't good enough, so I let Brenda eat again. And the second time, his prices were still not that great. Third time around, still not good. And by the fourth time, I was sorta done curing this dude. So I brought him out of Brenda's home, squeezed him into a new trading spot, and began feeding this dude all of my flesh. That sounds really bad. The next day I was getting some more gunpowder for fireworks before heading off to the end for an important mission. And that mission was to respawn the Ender Dragon. I made those crystals over 20 days ago, and it was now time to defeat the Ender Dragon for the second time. I knew going into this fight that I may not only lose my Enderman farm, but possibly my entire world if I die. But with the final crystal placed, there was no going back. And with my powerful bow and elytra wings, I soared into the sky to remove the dragon's regeneration crystals. With the crystals gone, I used my wings to fight the Ender Dragon while flying myself. And with a few golden carrot punches to the noggin, I defeated my second Ender Dragon. I made a quick pit stop to the fully intact Enderman farm before heading off into the newest end gateway that spawned. I found one end city and grabbed an extra pair of wings before heading off in some random direction. And the next day I was still flying, because it turned out that I had not been going in some random direction, and I somehow traveled all the way back to the main end island. Not even joking, I don't know how I screwed up this badly, but here I am. Back home, I headed to the overworld surface following my beacon's beam, and the reason I came up here was to actually mine more stone, since I somehow traded all of it to my masons. I haven't been showing it, but most of the time during these 100 days, that was what I was doing, either to mend up my gear or to just get a lot more money. But I don't really mind mining stone, because these sounds are just exquisite. And with over 3 shulker boxes worth of stone, I think I'll be set for the rest of these 32 days. I traveled back down the beacon beam the next morning and started selling my stone immediately. And even though some of my masons raised their prices, it really didn't matter, since I had so much of this stuff that I would be making a ton of emeralds either way. And speaking of a ton of emeralds, this day I surpassed over 2 stacks of emerald blocks. And to end off this happy day, I filled in the rest of my ceiling using polished andesite slabs, which completed the second floor of my home. But the next day I wanted to focus on the exterior of the house, as it was looking a bit plain. I added some deep slate pillars and used some copper blocks for the first time, and I would be lying if I said I didn't love this block. And to finish off the exterior, I decided to change the roof of the second story to be a bit more curved, and building this was a challenge. Placing stairs while you don't have any building space is just a nightmare, but it really helped the build, and I was enjoying the overall look of it way more than before. The next day, I was in the nether at a new nether fortress I found, which gave me some nether wart as well as my first crimson logs. I went to this nether fortress for more skulls, as I once again planned on killing the wither, but this time with a twist. Fortunately for me, it didn't take long to get 3 skulls, meaning that I could summon the boss once I was ready. And after some last minute sales on day 172, I then made my final pit stop at my egg farm, and any returning viewers probably know exactly where I'm taking these. This wither fight wouldn't be underground in a tunnel, but instead I wanted to fight this wither on the open surface. This would be a lot more challenging, seeing as I didn't have any protective blocks to block witherheads from hitting me. But before I summon this guy, I think you all know what I have to do. And with my chicken summoned, I placed the final head and prepared to defeat my 4th wither. Another nether star in the bag, and only 1 golden apple needed to defeat the boss. And of course, my chicken sacrifices will not be forgotten, as they will always be in my heart. And in my storage room in the form of wither roses. But I wasn't done on the surface just yet, because I wanted to fly back over to my gold farm to restock on gold and flesh. And after lots of swinging, I had over 2.5 stacks of flesh to sell to my cleric and generate some more money. On day 177, I tried some new trades with my cleric, such as the glass bottles trade, but I sort of realized that trading for the next 25 days would be extremely boring to watch, so I forced myself to do something else. And that something else was fishing to get some fish to tame another cat. And this cat took not 1, not 2, but 3 fish to tame. Has this thing ever eaten? Why is it so hungry? But after this, I embarked on a 2-day journey to try and find my final Axolotl variant. The blue Axolotl. This mob only has a 0.08% chance of spawning, which is pretty rare. Needless to say, I was going to be married and have 3 children and a grandchild before I could find one of these axolotls naturally. So I then tried enchanting a fishing rod to catch and breed axolotls with tropical fish, which would have worked, except for the fact that you can't catch those in a cave, and you can't breed axolotls with tropical fish. So yeah. And the next day, I returned to a cave that had both a zombie and spider spawner close to each other, as I wanted to turn both of these into mob grinders. This spider dungeon was also the one that held the notch apple in the last video, just for reference. I started with the spider spawner, following a tutorial by Shulkercraft to help clear out an area for spawning, killing, and collection. And after punching out the torches, I had a pretty efficient spider farm. Next up was the zombie spawner, which had a pretty similar design to the spider spawner, just with a slightly less complicated killing chamber. It was basically just a big room, water flowing to 1 block, and a hole big enough to kill zombies, and small enough to not be killed by zombies. And with lights out on day 184, I set up a mini enchanting area in the killing room, while I killed both zombies and spiders at the same time. At this point, I also started making a staircase and planning out a design for my killing room, as I wanted it to look at least somewhat nice. So I went back to one of my masons, bought some red terracotta, and combined it with my second favorite block, polished deep slate, for the floor. After this, I searched for an amethyst geode, as I needed some amethyst shards, which I managed to get over 5 stacks of. Amethyst shards can be combined with glass to make tinted glass, which is glass that doesn't let any light in. And I figured that this block would be perfect to use for a wall next to the spider spawner, so I could see what was happening inside of the grinder. I also couldn't resist myself from using warp planks in the killing room. I just like this block way too much. And for the final touch, I added the motivational dropper, which drops motivational quotes such as, "If you can't get out of bed, just get up." Modern day Confucius, some might call me. At the end of the day, I designed the staircase to the killing room, and the place was nearly complete. Day 188, I was running low on quartz, so I spent some time grabbing some before heading off to the stronghold. And the reason I came here was to pick up some more bookshelves from the Stronghold library, as I used all of my bookshelves on the Killing Chambers enchanting station. Fortunately for me, I found it eventually and began reading as many books as I could hold. After that, I went to repair my pretty much full durability tools before mining some of the end pillars for some extra obsidian. With 10 days left, I traded some more flesh and tried desperately to find the blue axolotl. But I swear, these things just don't spawn. Day 191, I passed over 3 stacks of emerald blocks, and then it was time to start on my final project of this world. And this final project was going to be a cliffside farming area where I could grow potatoes and carrots. I also wanted another redstone project to do, which is why I also planned on making some automatic farms here. The only issue was that the redstone sort of hung out of the wall, since I was building inside of a cliff, but I could deal with the auto carrot farm pretty fine. The main issue was the potato side, because there was no terrain I could connect to cover up the redstone. But they don't call me TheTerrain for nothing, so I had to make a new cliff. Does it look good? No. But does it cover the redstone? Absolutely. And does the farm actually work? well enough. My sheep farm also provided some carpets for the ground, and I spent the rest of day 193 creating the cliff under the auto potato farm. And on day 194, I was doing some minor designs, such as using smooth stone on the walls with, you guessed it, polished deep slate. I think I have an unhealthy addiction to using this block. And with some polished andesite and a crafting table placed on day 195, my center was fully complete. I decided to spend this day farming music discs, and fortunately, I managed to obtain Sherp, Maul, and my personal favorite, 11. On a scale of 1 to 10, I rate it 11. Thank you. I'll be here all night, folks. I brought some gold to the nether on day 196, as I wanted to barter again for some more blackstone and quartz. And during this exchange, I witnessed my piglin buddies hunting down Pumbaa from the Lion King. And I don't think I've ever laughed so hard at mobs before. But at least the piglins sold me quartz and blackstone before they died, because I was planning on using these for a mini nether hub. Now obviously, I'm not going to make a full-on nether castle with 3 days left, but I wanted to make an area to protect me from, well, these guys. Using slabs, I managed to mob-proof the area surrounding my portal, and with some extra lights and the ugliest doors in the game, I could safely walk around my portal without any piglins trying to kill me. Back home, day 198, I fortuned my iron, copper, gold, redstone, lapis, and coal ores that were lying around in my chests. I also rotated all of my item frames so that the items were in the correct direction. You can't even begin to imagine how good it felt to finally do this. On day 199, I decided to make myself a custom shield, and seeing as I had the rare snout banner pattern from Bastion rating, I figured that there was no better design than to put a beautiful orange snout on my shield's banner. And already, the shield was looking pretty okay. But to really beef it out, I bought some mending and unbreaking books to apply to my shield, and we now had the best shield in the game. And to end off this day, I decided to grind out my Enderman farm to get to level 100, which on day 200, I hit. This was going to be my last day in this world, possibly forever, so I really took this day to look at all that I had accomplished. From becoming Bezos level rich, to building a custom cave, to even meeting companions like Brenda. I had done so much in this world, and this day was a perfect reminder of what I had created in the total 50 hours of gameplay. From my first ever pigment farm to my first auto sheep farm, this world was undeniably incredible. And while I couldn't find that rare blue axolotl that I really wanted, I still learned a valuable lesson. That even without everything you want, that doesn't mean you can't feel happy with what you have. And after stripping off my armor and shield, with the sounds of weight to serenade me, I took my final rest on my 200th day on my hardcore caves-only world. And now, I will ruin this emotional ending in 1 second.